After Lucy's husband passed away, she had lived independently for so many years, but she knew she needed the support. She was 27 years old, and people had always been there to sit by her bedside and hand her coffee and snacks. She knew she needed the support, and she would ask for it with total trust. She kept her word to Lucy and close to 10, and from the age of Connor and Eve's home was large and spacious, but what Lucy truly needed wasn't space, it was companionship. At her age and with her fragile health, she was no longer able to manage on her own. The transition wasn't easy for her, but she tried to make the best of it. Connor, aware of her weak knees, made sure to arrange for her to stay on the first floor of their house. He didn't want her to have to use the stairs, which had become difficult for her to navigate. It seemed like a thoughtful gesture, but Lucy couldn't help but feel a sense of displacement in her own son's home. As days turned into weeks, Lucy tried to adjust to the new routine. Connor worked long hours in the IT sector, and Eve was a housewife. This meant that Lucy and Eve spent a lot of time together. Surprisingly, they got along well, though it wasn't without its challenges. Lucy, used to managing her own house, would often offer to help with the chores. Eve, though grateful at first, began to allow Lucy to do more and more. At first, it was simple things, dusting, folding laundry, and helping with the dishes. But, over time, Lucy found herself doing almost all of the household work. It wasn't that Lucy didn't want to help. On the contrary, she liked keeping herself busy and feeling useful. But there was a growing sense of frustration within her. She had gone from being an independent woman who managed her own home to feeling like a servant in someone else's house. She loved her son and daughter-in-law, but there was a sense of imbalance. Connor worked all day, and Eve, though at home, didn't seem to share the workload. One day, just a few days before Christmas, Eve made a request that pushed Lucy to her breaking point. Eve, lounging in the living room, turned to Lucy and said, "Lucy, after you finish the laundry, could you run out and do the grocery shopping for tonight's dinner, and also for Christmas dinner? 9 people are coming over. I'll give you the money before you leave." Lucy was stunned. She had been doing so much already, and the idea of going out to do all the shopping by herself was overwhelming. Lucy's knees were weak, and she knew walking around the store for hours would be too much for her. The two women had always shopped together, and now Eve was asking her to take on this responsibility alone. It felt like a final straw, a moment that made Lucy realize that, as long as she stayed in their home, she would continue to feel like an unpaid maid, doing all the work without much appreciation. For the first time, Lucy realized she had to leave. She knew she couldn't stay forever, but she also knew she had to take action. Yet, before she could leave, she wanted to teach Eve a lesson about how much she had been doing, all the while getting little help in return. Lucy's own house was not empty. When she moved in with Connor and Eve, she had made the decision to rent out her home, and the rent money went directly to Connor to help with their finances. So, as much as she wanted to leave and go back to her own space, she couldn't just walk out. Her hands were tied, and it made her feel trapped in a situation that was becoming more difficult by the day. With Christmas approaching, Lucy decided to take control of the situation in her own way. She spent the next couple of days in the kitchen, preparing a full holiday feast. She didn't just cook the main dish, she made the side dishes, the appetizers and the desserts. All of it. Eve didn't offer to help with any of it, instead leaving Lucy to handle the cooking on her own. But Lucy, ever the perfectionist, poured her heart into the meal, determined to show both Eve and the guests just how much she was capable of. When Christmas Day arrived, Lucy was exhausted but proud of the work she had put into the meal. Connor's friends and family gathered around the table, their eyes wide as they marveled at the spread of food. The compliments started pouring in. "Aunt Lucy, this food is absolutely amazing," said Ross, one of Connor's friends. "Did you cook all of this by yourself?" Lucy smiled warmly, pride shining in her eyes. "I did, Ross. Every last bit of it." Eve, who had been quiet up until that moment, couldn't help but join in. "I honestly didn't think you'd be able to cook so many delicious things, Lucy. You've really outdone yourself." "Thank you, Eve," Lucy replied, feeling a small sense of victory inside. The words from the guests were validating, but Lucy wasn't looking for praise. She wanted Eve to realize just how much she had been doing, alone, without help. After the dinner, the guests left, and Lucy, exhausted from the day's events, went into the kitchen to clean up. She expected to be alone, as usual, but this time, Eve followed her in. There was something different in her demeanor. Perhaps the weight of the day's events had finally hit her. "Lucy, can we talk for a moment?" Eve asked, her voice softer than usual. "Of course, darling," Lucy replied, setting down the dish she was washing. "What's on your mind?" Eve hesitated, then said, "I didn't realize how much you'd been doing around here. I wanted to take it easy this Christmas, and I guess I added more to your load without thinking. I'm really sorry, Lucy. I didn't mean to take you for granted." Lucy stood still for a moment, her heart softening at Eve's words. She had wanted this moment, wanted Eve to see the reality of what she had been doing. But instead of responding with anger or resentment, Lucy smiled gently. "It's more than fine, Eve. I just need you to understand that as much as I want to help around the house, I'm getting older, and my knees aren't what they used to be." Eve nodded slowly, clearly reflecting on her actions. "You're right," she said quietly. "We make a great team, don't we?" Lucy smiled. "We do, Eve. We just need to share the load a little more." Eve's eyes softened and she stepped forward, placing a hand on Lucy's arm. "Come on," she said warmly. "Let's go sit down. You've done more than enough today. I'll make you a cup of tea." Lucy allowed herself to relax for the first time in weeks. She had gotten her point across, and Eve had learned a valuable lesson. It wasn't about the food or the cleaning or the shopping. It was about mutual respect, about recognizing the effort others put in and knowing when to ask for help. As Lucy sat down with her tea, her heart felt lighter. She knew she still had a lot to figure out, but for the first time in a long while, she felt heard, appreciated, and, most importantly, understood.